Okay.
All right. Well, good afternoon.
Hi there.
And at least I won't forget your name, that's for sure.
All right.
So the first, to start off, would you like to say, your name and where you are right now?
So Heather Berthoud, and I am outside of Washington, D.C. in the U.S. Yes.
Okay. And the first question is, who are you as a human being? Who are you as a person? I mean, that can be values, passions, whatever you'd like to share about yourself.
Who am I as a human being? Okay, that's the first. That's the stumper.
just
Okay,
something light to start off,
we'll start with the stumper. I'm struck by, like, do I give you my biography? Do I tell you, I'm somebody who likes to sit outside in the sun. I'm happiest in springtime, so you're catching me on a good day.
Mhm.
It's spring here, and the flowers are making themselves known, so I'm happy about that. Get to sit in a patch of sun before the bugs have come awake. Um, Other people say I think deep thoughts. I don't know if I agree with that, but I know that I'm a thinker. I spend a lot of time in my head, um, and try as much as possible to balance that by being in my body, um, through hiking and yoga and those sorts of things. That's a big question. Who am I as a human? Start with something simpler. Give me
Okay.
an easy.
Well, how about that same one, but in pieces? Like, what would you say are some of your passions?
Okay. Uh, I several passions. One is it. There's something about it matters to me that people feel and know their wholeness. That they can. Um, yeah. Me too. I mean, it's not like I'm including myself in that. Um, and to know joy, to know. I was talking to somebody today whose big question was, what what needs to be done, and it was a revelation to him that he could also ask, what do I want to do? And that those things they could overlap, they could be distinct, but at least the question of what what makes my heart sing is a reasonable question to ask and
Hmm.
put on the table. Um, yeah, I think I mean, I could talk about politics, I could talk about justice, I could talk about a lot of things, but fundamentally it comes down to that the people have an opportunity to know and actualize their wholeness, their whole selves.
Hmm.
Then there's stuff I like to do. I love hiking, like being out in nature and wild places.
Does anything different come up for you if I frame it as what are some of your values?
What are some of my values? Independence, self-determination, um, clarity, uh, equity, um, uh, sort of the seeing the worth of people, um, learning. sort of a sense of ever expansion of self and knowledge and yeah.
Okay.
And there's, I'd say, this is this is a sense of duty as well as a value, but as a participant, right? Not like, I don't know how to
Not like
phrase.
an obedience kind of duty.
Yeah, no, not an obedience, but sort of recognizing that I have a place in the, in the wider world, and it matters how I play that role, whatever
Hmm.
that role is. If I'm lately I've been thinking of myself as a grain of sand or a drop in the ocean. So it's not a sense of grandness necessarily, but that any drop in the ocean matters, right? Whether it's poisonous or healthful. So let me be a good drop.
Hmm. Okay. So I'm also wondering what comes up for you as an event in your life, in any aspect of your life, or a set of circumstances that you would say have really influenced or shaped who you are.
um, well, there are a ton of them, and you're catching me at a time after I've been doing a lot of reflection on my biography. So, but I'd say there are several early life events that shape who I am. So one is immigrating to the U.S. as a child, and sort of being not just the new kid, but the weird kid, and experiencing bullying um, as a result of that. So that's one. The other is my father died when I was 13, and I'm the eldest of my siblings.
Hmm.
So that's a sort of wrenching moment. I think those are probably the two big events that fundamentally I'm sort of, how it is. We're always reliving or reworking those things. So I think from the bullying experience, I draw my interest in uh, cross-cultural work, um, sort of a sense of seeing and valuing different cultures and different ways of experiencing and expressing, and making sure that people have space for that.
Hmm.
Um, I'm hypersensitive to bullying and exclusion. So, I think that all of that comes out of that time. And because that time was also a time of political turmoil in the US, I also have a sense of um, wanting the espoused values to be um, actualized, right? That
Hmm.
it's not enough to say, oh, we believe in freedom or whatever the latest phrase is, but like, what does it
Yeah.
actually look like as it is being lived out? Um, and then I'd say from my father's death, there's, I think those two together, but sort of going on to his death, it's a strong sense of independence and needing to um, manage safety for myself, safety for others, and recognizing fairly early the precariousness of life. So in that sense, I think a friend of mine said recently, something like, things don't seem to bother you when they end. Like you sort of take them, like, really, if a group, this was in the context of a group that was choosing to disband, and there were people who were distraught about it. And I was like, yeah, okay, it's ending.
Yeah, you figured that out pretty early on, huh?
Yeah,
Things
like,
end.
because that sort of thing doesn't bother me as much. So I'd say those are probably the two big early life events that um, influence who I am.
Okay. Well, another question about a different part of you is how you experience or understand yourself within your gender or as a woman.
Oh boy. Well, okay, so this is going to be a short interview. Um, this is a big question. So back to my early life. So I told you I'm the eldest. I'm the eldest of three daughters, and my father died when I was 13. That lays the groundwork for a sense of gender as not all that important in my lived experience, right? Because we didn't have room to have gender roles in a house of all women, all female. But also really clear that there are gender roles out there that then get imposed. I think also because the ways that, I can remember these lists in college psychology, women tend to do this and men tend to do that, right? So it almost doesn't matter what, right? Strength, compassion, whatever the traits are, right? Where people land on the Myers-Briggs, etc. And I never landed squarely in the female or women or right that side or the feminine side. And so I'd be like, huh, that's interesting. So either this means I'm not really a woman, which is not true. Like I don't argue with that. Or these lists really don't make a whole lot of sense. And so in my sense, like those lists don't really make too much sense. The sort of gender binary um,
Yeah.
sort of constructs that I get that it's it's a construct, but it doesn't serve me all that well. Um, I was too direct, I was too tall, I was too smart, I was like whatever I was not fully squarely in the in the in the in the band that was identified as feminine
Mhm.
or feminine enough. It's a pain. But at this point, I like, I'm old enough now that I just don't care. I'm just sort of like, you'll figure it out. Yes, I'm a woman. And no, I don't fit your stereotypes. You deal with that. Let's keep moving.
Mhm.
It's all right.
Hmm. Well, actually, that was my next question, which is how you are experiencing this age that you're at right now, whatever that may be.
Um, I think this age is it's delightful and frustrating, right? I'm old enough to have some perspective and to have enough road behind me so that I can sort of see stages and phases and recurrences, etc. I'm old enough so that the things that upset people who are much younger, I watch myself go, oh yeah, okay, that's upsetting you. Yeah, okay, fine, we'll come. You know what I mean? Like I'm,
Mhm.
and so I want to be careful that I'm not dismissing their real experience, but my experience of their experience is like, okay, yeah, something else will happen, and that's how life unfolds. So I sort of have enough experience for that, but I'm also old enough that I can see my age. I not just see it. I mean, I can see it in my, but start to have some physical manifestations of, the body's decline. And that's humbling and frustrating. And, I get to play right on the edge of resistance and acceptance, right? Like, okay, what do you mean I can, fill in the blank, what do you mean I can't do what I used to do, or, that my mobility is curtailed, or my range is, like, things happen. And it, for, even though that's true, I mean, I know myself to be fit and healthy, and
Yeah, these little surprise novelties still creep in.
right, it's like,
Mhm.
oh look, oh yeah, there's another sign. Huh, okay.
Okay. So another question, this is the last of the more personal ones. Probably, a short answer too, which is, how do you experience and understand power and privilege in your life?
In multiple ways. There's what I have personally, and there's what I have at the level of the social systems I'm part of. Okay? So if you ask me about power and privilege personally, I have quite a bit. I have agency, right? There are things I can do, I can choose to do. I'm aware of the realm of doing that's available to me. I can make choices and actualize them. And also at the level of the personal, I have enough. So I'm not a precarious worker, right? I don't, I have enough to eat. I have a place to live. So in that sense, I have. In the larger system, I mean, just by virtue of being a Black woman at this age in the US, that's undergoing its own sort of reckoning. Some parts wanting to, other parts not, right? The things happening. There's a funny sort of, on the one hand, I realize that I am of value to the system by virtue of where I sit in it, right? I'm an immigrant, I can see some things, I have a voice I can use. And on the other hand, I'm not all, there are other parts of the system that would happily say, we're done with you. We really don't want to hear from you anymore. So it really depends on where and how we're talking about power and privilege, and what level of system we're working at, for me to answer. But I'm not somebody who feels like I don't have it, right? I have it on some dimensions and not on others. I'm educated. I have access to things that I might not otherwise have access to. And I can go anywhere and be dismissed and mistaken for the help by people who don't have good eyes. So both of those things exist.
Okay. So, and I'm sure a lot of this comes up in your work and in your professional life as well, which is kind of what I would like to switch to now, if that's okay.
Sure.
Which is, I mean, first of all, this is an interview with like a meeting point around Gestalt. So how and when and where did you come to Gestalt? How did that happen for you?
So I did my master's in organization development in the 90s. So finished in 95. And after that, did some continuing ed. And I think in one of those places, somewhere in the late 90s, I got introduced to Gestalt in a workshop or at a conference or, pre-conference something, late 90s, early 2000s, maybe. So I sort of had an awareness of it as a thing. And then one summer, I went up to Cape Cod and did a course with Edwin Nevis. And that was amazing, just absolutely fabulous. And so then got connected with him and the Gestalt International Study Center on Cape Cod. Was going back and forth there for a while, and then took a deep dive with iGold in, I think that ended in 2015. I think that's right. And that would have been with Marianne Rainey and John O. Hannafin and others. So yeah, so so I feel like if I look at my, there's sort of the Gestalt International Study Center, Cape Cod, and iGold. Those are probably the two big anchors of my Gestalt experience.
And what did you find in Gestalt?
The power of presence and awareness. Those two things, separately and in combination, are almost everything. And then the ability of Gestalt practitioners and theorists to really break down process, pay attention to the subtleties and steps that people go through, people groups go through. But I'd say fundamentally, presence and awareness, those two elements, practices, and that the thing that I'm fascinated by now is how tightly that those, particularly those elements, but also the rest of Gestalt and the Gestalt approach to change, right? The emergent, the sort of seeing what is and just dealing with what is here, what is right now, and then emerging into the next now without having to forecast and plan and do lockstep, right? It's sort of a reality-based approach to dealing with the reality of organizations and people and groups. That also feels very much aligned with my mindfulness meditation practice. And so I've been curious lately about the overlap between those. And when I decide to get serious about that, I'll probably start investigating the sort of the antecedents for the pearls and their experience of Buddhism, Buddhist training, but also sort of how the conceptual and practice work aligns. Yeah.
Okay. And how would you say that your contact with Gestalt, and this is another big open kind of question, how has it affected you as a person?
So one of the things I find fascinating is when I'm in Gestalt communities, gatherings, organized events, there is an underlying friendliness, an underlying relational connection that I don't get anywhere else. And as I told you, bullying and exclusion and all of that is a very big part of my life, and part of my sort of hypersensitive antenna, right? That's what I'm alert to, and I don't get it when I'm with Gestalt folks. Like there's a so I find when I allow myself into Gestalt spaces that I'm at ease in a different way. That
Wow.
I'm, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And therefore, sort of coming back, then once I've, sort of dip into that pool, right? Then when I come back into my world, my consulting practice here, my home, my family, my neighborhood, there's more of me
Hmm.
that's available for those spaces.
Hmm. Okay. And so what is it when you say come back into your world, into your work and things like that? What is, I don't know if it's the essence, but I mean, what are some of the things that characterize what you do, and particularly with regards to Gestalt?
This is one of those questions I'd much prefer to have my clients talk about that, because sometimes I'm
It's a
not so
weird question.
sure
It's
I
like,
can.
what do you actually do?
What do you
It's like,
actually do? I think so. I think what my clients would say, and I do believe. I think I listen deeply. I try to see them in their deepest goodness and aspiration, and hold them to account to that, lovingly, not, but we can all forget how good and how capable we are. So I think with my clients, that's a big piece of what I do.
and are
Um,
you speaking on an individual level or on like a systems organization consulting level?
all of the above. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think what Gestalt, what allows me to do with them is then say, what's happening right now? And let's mine the now in service of whatever then you would like to create, right? So we're not ignoring the current reality. And then I'm aware, I think, with clients that sometimes they just need to hear that, yep, that's exactly the way it is, and that's okay. That's so much of what people are doing is fighting what is. And just to be able to say, actually, it is hard, or actually, yeah, this is frustrating, or it's confusing, or yes, you've been working really hard for a very long time and you haven't gotten the results that you want. Like whatever is true, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to say that, yes, that's true, and you're not crazy for it. Like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
just like stopping in that reality for a moment before making it something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think my clients would also say that I'm calm, which I find funny, but you know, I sometimes I'm like, okay, that's what calm looks like to you. But it's a common enough comment that
Mm-hmm.
I have to believe that there's something I'm giving out, that I think it is that I don't react as I don't know that it's, I mean, they call it calm. That's the language they use.
Mm-hmm.
In this moment, I hear non-reactive presence, that I'm not, I don't get upset with them. I'm like, oh yeah, ooh, that's a good one. You know what I mean? Like I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get, I don't get blown off course um, much. It's not never, but
Mm-hmm.
not much. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, that's interesting. So I'm wondering what some of the challenges that you have faced in practicing, in doing this, in training. What have you run up against as challenges?
So there are a couple things. One is when things are really complex, it's hard to know what is here and now. You know, it's sort of, things are a swirl, and this one over here is upset, and that one's confused, and this one's asserting power, and that one's trying to undermine, and you know,
There's a lot in
so
the room.
there's a lot in the room. And so that can be really challenging. And I'm somebody, as you can probably tell from this interview, I mean, I don't answer really quickly. You know, I'm sort of like, oh, all right, let's take that in, let's see. And in a world of extroverts that like to answer things fast or want me to answer, you're the expert, tell us what you think. I'm like, I don't know. So I can be challenged when they want something faster than I process, or they want things in a way that is more definitive than I have to give them. But I've learned to say that's not my timing. So, you know, just
Yeah, I don't get the impression that you're a slow processor, just that you're just not reactive
oh,
in
well,
that sense.
there you go. See,
Yeah.
there you go. All
Yeah,
right, so
I
there you
agree
have
with
it.
that description in this tiny little experience here. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
So I had this client last year that was really, I found this really challenging. It was a big project with lots of moving parts, and I was regularly confused. I mean, I was sort of, what are they doing? What do they want? But the fun, fascinating part was to sort of just sit with that and notice that I'm confused. If I'm confused, they're confused, right? Okay. Confusion. What does confusion feel like? What are the elements of confusion? What is making this confused? What am I expecting that is not there? What am I not expecting that is there? Oh, okay. And this feels like what? Ah, got it. And then I can go back to them and say, we're in a swirl, or you know, it feels like ping pong balls going in a bunch of different directions, or whatever it is, right? There's some metaphor I can come up with that says, and that's my experience. Is this your experience? Yes. Okay. Let's tease that apart. What do we want to do about it now? You know, if that's so, and we're not happy about it, right? Then what does that suggest we might do next, right? So like, okay, fine. So I'm good about that. Challenge. The other challenge, I think that the places where I've been challenged is when I have forgotten to be humble about my cultural grounding. So, you know, if I was it's actually in Canada, working with some folk, with a group that included First Nations people, and was challenged in a very direct and frontal, confrontational way about the style I brought to that space that felt to them, or to this one person in particular, very Western and colonized mind, which, you know, who wants to hear that? But I think what I got from that was, you know, anytime you start believing your own press, you're in trouble. You know, like, so it was an important thing. It's like, oh, right, actually, even though like I hold the US at arm's length, you know, even though I've been here the vast majority of my life, there's no way to deny that I have imbibed the US way of doing things. So that now when I go out into other places, I can say, you know what? I know enough to know that there's stuff here I don't know. I don't necessarily know what it is. I don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily know how to navigate it. But if I can find somebody who can work with me, then we can navigate that together. Right? If I can find a culture guide or somebody who's willing to be an explorer with me,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't have to rely just on what is the way I have learned to do things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which
Yeah,
is very different than like an intentional colonization, right?
right.
So, hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. And what about the other side of that? What comes to mind? I have a difficult time finding the right phrase for this. Either things that have gone well, or peak moments, or favorite
Mm.
moments. Just, I mean, what stays with you as something warm?
You know, I think I probably succumb to the recency principle on this, right? It's like whatever happened last week or today is the thing that I'm going to talk about. Um, I think in some of the coaching that I've done where, you know, there's this moment you can sort of see people are leaving their experience. You know, they're, excuse me, they might talk about, and you can see that the frown happened on the face, or you know, there's a clenching or there's an opening or whatever it is, and they go right by it and not sort of notice it. And so I think some of the most gratifying experiences are when I can say to somebody, what's happening right now? Or, you know, have you noticed that your shoulders are up by your ears? Or, wow, that's a really brilliant smile. I haven't seen that from you lately. Or today I talked to somebody and she said something, oh, I'm making changes. I'm gonna, it's like, that's the most definitive I've heard you ever about this topic. It's like, is that, it's like, oh yes, you know. So those moments, you know, they're little moments, but they feel like, yes, right there, helping people get in touch with themselves.
Mm.
Um, and that's true whether I'm working in a one-on-one relationship or with a group of people or with a whole organization, where an organization can say, wow, we're aligned now,
Mm.
right? We have had meaningful conversations with each other that we didn't have before. We see each other and we see ourselves. We see our system. We see the dynamics that we've created, and we see how to make them different. We can track, oh, that right there, that intake of breath suggests that oh, you wanted to say something, let's hear from you. Or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whoa, look at that, that's a question masquerading as a statement. Oh, you know, oh, that's
Yeah.
a statement masquerading as a question. Oh, they can do that, right? So to be able to then say, and now we can manage ourselves.
Mm.
um, yeah.
Mm.
I and
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. You mentioned the phrase a little while ago, Gestalt community.
Mhm.
I'm wondering what that means to you. Do you feel like you're part of a Gestalt community?
Um, in as much as I allow myself to be part of any community, so let's just, you know, we have to sort of um,
Okay.
bracket things there. But yes, so as I mentioned, I have participated with the Gestalt International Study Center on Cape Cod and with iGold. And then a group of us who went through the iGold uh, process program some years ago are in this area. So we've maintained a community of practice, and then some other folks who have done other Gestalt training have joined us in that. So
Hmm.
there's I think there are about 8 of us who meet regularly. Um, and so yes, and then the iGold alumni group is also active. And what's funny is that I'm part of it, but I'm not the engine of it, right?
Okay.
So that I will participate. Yeah. And at some point I might realize that, oh, I kind of like, I mean, this is true for me forever. I'm a reluctant joiner. And that, so I wade into communities slowly and then realize, oh, look, I'm in a lot of them as it happens. But I've gotten in, there are some people who I think they're like, oh, yay, people, a new group, let's go join. Let's go. And that's not me. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I'm mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, I'm glad I managed to get you out into this then. So that's an achievement. You waited out. So I guess really the last question that I have for you right now is, what's next and where are you going and where do you think Gestalt will be going from here?
Ooh, I can answer the first a lot easier than I can answer the second.
Mhm.
I am having a grand time realizing that I don't have to do everything and I don't have to be busy all the time. And that in fact, feeding my spirit allows me to do a better job with my clients. So you're also getting, I'm just finishing up a sabbatical. So that's the other thing. I'm like, oh, that was great. Let's do that again. Um, so yeah, so that's a revelation. So what's
A
next
sabbatical from work or
from work?
professorship
Yeah,
or
no,
okay.
from work, from my consulting practice.
Okay.
Um, so I'm in re-entry. uh,
Okay.
and this is part of my reentry. It's partly why it got postponed till now.
Okay.
Um, so I'm, so what's next? I'm, sort of vetting projects that I might want to do. And what I'm aware of is I'd like to do, a couple meaty projects. They could be domestic, they can be international. I'm not as, but as long as they're interesting. I sort of, I tend to work with organizations that are trying to do good in the world, and I like that. So keep up with that. I'm enjoying writing. And like I said, I'm curious about the intersection of Buddhist psychology and sort of structures of mind and practices and Gestalt, OD in particular, Gestalt organization development. So like I said, when I get myself serious about a professional project, that could be one that I'm interested in. I enjoy teaching, so I'm probably going to be on the lookout for a teaching, at least one teaching opportunity, and whether that's in a university setting or someplace else. I'm not that fussy. It's a way for me to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. You teach what you want to learn, and
Mm-hmm.
it sort of helps, and it also then helps me know, it helps me know what I know and that I know. So I like teaching for those reasons. But I find myself okay with not being crazy busy, and that's all right. Now,
That's
what's
nice.
next for Gestalt? Whew, who knows? Um, so let me go out on a little bit of a limb because this really is like way out for me. COVID has given us such an opportunity to deal with what is, right? There is a lot of crap that has been hiding in plain sight that many institutions and people have not wanted to deal with. Similarly with racial reckoning, the murder of George Floyd last year and the continued abuse of people of color. There was just another shooting in the US yesterday, day before yesterday, whatever it is. I mean, I haven't checked the news today, it could be today. So there's an emerging conversation about inequity, and at the same time, a challenge, the language of when can we get back to normal just seems to me like uh, a telegraphing of resistance to what is, right? So I think Gestalt has a moment of an opportunity to help with both grappling with both of those things, grappling with how do we deal with what is and allow ourselves to emerge into what needs to happen next, right? What's the action that is being called for now that this energy has been mobilized, right? We're using Gestalt language, right? Like, oh, okay, what's called for? Let's go do that.
Yeah, and there's that resistance
Mhm.
to what is called for.
Exactly. And so how do we deal with that? I think the idea of bracketing might need to be expanded, because a lot of times I think, like, you started out asking questions about identity as like woman and issues of power and all of that. I've experienced times in Gestalt practices and communities where people are like, okay, let's just talk about this narrow thing, whatever that is, this conversation, as though now is not conditioned by what came before, right? And so the notion of here and now as connected to there and then, particularly historically there and then, I think becomes an important piece for us to hold and work with. And as I said, I was just talking to somebody, a client I was getting back in touch with, and she was working with a couple of my associates, and she said, I really appreciated how diligent, I forget the word she used, committed perhaps, to how they did the work. And in so doing, we had to slow ourselves down and not just barrel through the production of stuff, right?
Yeah, the normal, right?
Yeah, but to really notice that how we do is what we do. You know, we think of them as separate. Oh, what are we doing? How are we doing it? Well, actually, how is, like they're the same. They're connected. And so I think Gestalt has an opportunity, a moment to be able to be heard in a way that it hasn't been heard. Because I don't think it's Gestalt that needs to do anything particularly new. We might need to figure out how to use language that's a little more accessible to people who aren't already trained in it. But the fundamentals of be here now, attend to what's so, right? What's your internal experience? What's your external experience? What's actually happening? Those things, keep doing it.
And it's interesting. I was sitting with some stuff that you said earlier, and you've come back to the doing quite a few times. And I'm just thinking, I generally frame my own Gestalt as more about being than the actual doing. And
it's interesting because I'm not sure I hear myself the way you've heard me. So what have I said that
No, I don't mean like ignoring process or experience
Mm.
or anything like that. It's just a couple of times you've said the word doing and it just
Huh.
popped up.
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm not
No,
connected
I'm
to it.
just
So
just
that's all
yeah, no,
right.
I'm just yeah, just with what you said now, I'm coming back into the yeah, and since we have, a collective moment of some calm, just sort of reframe the being before we pick up and start doing things again because we're
Right.
being asked to have a look.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what, yes. And I think in some ways, the, what I'm, if I'm connecting to what I think you're hearing, I'm, I'm not separating them quite as much. That in attending to being, right, the attention to how we be, right, the attention to being is to inform our doing, and our doing reflects our being.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
they
no, I'm not
yeah,
getting that it was like some kind of
yeah,
radical polarized thing,
yeah,
but
yeah.
mhm,
So that's
interesting.
interesting. I have to think about that if I talk.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you would add at this point?
Oh, come on.
You just, you just want me to be quiet so you can hear the birds in peace.
I have no idea. I really, I came into this cold, so I don't, like, um, I don't know. I don't know.
Mhm.
I hope I've done my Gestalt colleagues proud. Like, ooh, did I say the right thing? I'm
Yeah.
sure I did.
Well,
All right.
I've really enjoyed meeting you and speaking with you. So
Well, thank you for what you're doing. I'm curious to go check this out now.
okay.
Yeah,
Well, welcome anytime. Is it
yeah.
okay if we leave it here then?
Yes, absolutely.